fuck up. It's time to talk business. Jared Taylor, Matt Best, and Evan Hafer proudly present Blackhearted. Sponsored by BlackRifle Coffee Company and Arson Wave.
Well, hello, everybody.
Hello, Jared. It's great to see you again.
Expel the rumors. Blackhearted is not going away. We're just we get to it when we have a good guest and we have time.
Yeah.
We're not going to just fill you with garbage episodes.
Yeah. I mean, we could interview the janitor if you guys want. Talk to you guys, but we're not going to waste anybody's time without having a very special experience. Somebody that you can create value.
You'll take something away from it, and that's why today's a special episode because it's going to be a very long two-part.
Ooh, two-parter.
Yeah,
I like this.
Yeah, 45 and 45. They're going to get a lot out of this one.
A double episode.
Yeah.
2 episodes.
A person that deserves 9 episodes.
Just 9?
D.
Why did you stop it? Why did you stop at 9?
Because I'm sure after 9, then the stories start getting way inappropriate.
Yeah. We start getting way inappropriate too, which, that might affect a business relationship. So let's do an introduction. So we have Tom Davin today. Tom Davin is the CEO of 511. I'll allow him to go into his professional resume or his history. We're going to start a little bit with his military history, and then we can work up to where he is currently. But very special guest. Specifically, we've developed a relationship over the last several months through one Kyle Lamb, I think, was the formal introduction, right?
He was the pivot man.
Mm-hmm. I love that. He was the pivot man.
And I mean, we're talking about someone that's very revolutionary in not only franchising but branding, and really knowing how to take a brand to a whole new level.
So Tom, without further ado, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself in the sense of where did you grow up, how did you enter the military, and then post-military, your experience. Give us your five minutes.
You got it. JT, Evan, it's great to be here in Salt Lake City enjoying some outstanding BlackRifle coffee. And it's a fine day. It's going to be, 100 degrees out here?
I think it's going to be like 130.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad that today I chose to wear pants.
I chose to wear this beautiful sweater.
But it's a dry heat like an oven. So I grew up in a place where the weather is even worse. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was born in New York City, grew up just west of Philly. My parents had both been in the Navy. My mother was from Boston, Mass. My dad, Rochester, New York. They met in the Navy in the 50s, fell in love. My mother got pregnant. They moved to New York. I was born in New York City. And then we moved to the Philadelphia area when I was about 4. And so when I decided to join Naval ROTC as a way to pay for college, my parents were delighted. They're like, oh, great. He's going to wear the Navy whites. But getting back to the Marine Corps side of it, as I joined the Marine Corps, they were sorely disappointed, and they never forgave me for that. But my mother had a huge influence on my life. Maybe we can talk about that in the context of business.
Yeah.
But I spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, 03, 02. Loved being an infantry guy. I was in during Cold War peacetime, so we did a lot of training to kill people and not much of killing people. So it was good for 6 years, but I got out and got an MBA. Decided I'd go into business where I wouldn't have the adult supervision I had in the Marine Corps. When you get to be a captain and they start sending you off to administrative jobs, you either have to get the lobotomy and gut it out or just move on. So fortunately, I moved on. I think it worked out well because I met my wife after I got out of the Marine Corps.
Where did you meet her?
I met her in Boston.
That's right. Because where did you get your MBA?
A little place called Harvard. So I try not to drop the H-bomb.
I know, I was going to force that outcome. I was crying it out.
So when I was in grad school there, if you're out in a bar and you're having a hard time meeting women, it just wasn't working, you'd go over and say, did I tell you I go to Harvard Business School? It was called dropping the H-bomb.
Dropping the H-bomb.
So I try not to drop it today. It's a little bit embarrassing. People expect more out of me when they know I went to Harvard Business School. But I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to look at a lot of different jobs coming out of Harvard. It was my decompression stop after the military. I had no clue what I wanted to do coming out of the Marine Corps as an infantry guy. And lo and behold, I decided to go where there were a lot of competitive former special ops people, and that was a merger department at Goldman Sachs. And a guy named Steve Bannon, who you may have heard of,
Oh, yeah.
who works for Mr. Trump, he was my key sponsor.
Was he really?
So Steve was a great mentor there. He was a couple years ahead of me. He was a boat driver in the Navy, but real hard-charging dude. So he brought me in for the summer between years of business school, and ultimately was my sponsor when I joined the merger department. And that was about 24 guys just working on big M&A deals.
Wow.
So it was a fantastic experience learning about finance and working 7 days a week on deals. But ultimately, I missed leading people. So that led me into the world of general management with PepsiCo, Taco Bell, Panda, and today 511 Tactical.
So how long did that take when you graduated from Harvard and you left Harvard and you went over to Goldman Sachs? How long were you there?
I was there just over 2 years.
Okay. And then when you left there, were you already kind of teed up to go somewhere else, or did you leave and then work, or I guess not work, but work your way into a different job, or did you already have it lined up?
Well, basically in business, I think everybody knows you kind of get branded as somebody who knows what they know. So
Right.
I was an investment banker, and nobody's going to trust an investment banker to
No.
run their company.
Right.
So I knew I wanted to lead businesses much like I led troops in the military.
Right.
But when I was at Goldman Sachs, I was realizing, okay, I'm getting out of shape. I'm making good money, probably 5 or 6 times what I made as a Marine captain. I just didn't see the higher purpose. I didn't see the mission in it. So as I looked around, I decided to go to a private equity firm called the Henley Group.
Mm-hmm.
Right after I spent that 2 years at Goldman. I was there about 2 years. That's when I met Molly. And I got a call from PepsiCo. They said, hey, we need a deal guy to come in, run our M&A practice, acquire new companies, and then we're going to send you out to one of the operating companies and have a general management job. I said, wait, you're going to pay me to be your in-house investment banker and then give me a chance to go run a business? I want to do that and then go have my own show. So I jumped into PepsiCo. That would have been about 4 years after coming out of business school.
And then how long were you there?
2 years at the headquarters as the M&A guy. That's where I met the Panda Express people.
Oh, okay.
We actually bought a minority interest in Panda Express because I looked at why Taco Bell was so successful. Taco Bell completely dominated then and today dominates the fast Mexican food category. And I thought, well, who else is going to dominate a category at some point in the future? So I did a little white paper on why I thought Chinese food would be the next emergent quick service concept, and ultimately I thought Panda would lead that category.
Were you right?
I think I was right. Yeah, I helped be part of that story.
Even in El Paso, I know where at least 4 of them are.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, the crazy thing about Chinese food is most people like Chinese food. It tends to be somewhat addictive, particularly if it's orange chicken.
Right.
But unlike pizza, it's hard to make.
Right.
So the problem with pizza is anybody can open a pizza shop.
Right.
There are no barriers to entry. Chinese food, you got to cook with a wok. It's high heat. It's fast cooking. That creates a big barrier to entry. So my thought was broad appeal, barrier to entry, scale makes a big difference. So we invested in Panda. Ultimately, PepsiCo sold that stake back to the family that owned Panda, the Churn family.
Right.
But then about a decade later, I jumped in there to run that. So it was my opportunity at PepsiCo to look at deals like Panda Express. I actually created the joint venture between Starbucks, one of your favorite companies,
yeah, one
Evan,
of my favorite, yeah.
Starbucks and PepsiCo, because at the time they had no cold coffee beverage. So I went to
Right.
Howard Schultz and said, have you ever considered a cold packaged coffee product that PepsiCo could distribute through convenience stores? He was like, I don't want to work with a big company. And the people at PepsiCo at the time said, who is Starbucks? Kind of hard to believe.
Right.
But we created a joint venture with a jointly owned concentrate company, and the rest is history. That's Frappuccino today in the bottle. And
Holy
at the
crap.
time, Howard didn't like anything sweetened. He was dead set against any sweetener in coffee. Can you imagine?
Wow. Well, I just have
That's
a
crazy.
little bit, like he just scratched out a little bit more respect for the man because I hate sweet drinks.
Yes.
Like I'm dead against
Yes.
sugar, like dead against it.
At the time, Howard was, and he forbade people to do any kind of blended drink or iced coffee at that point. That's 20 plus years ago.
Interesting.
I've got a question.
I forbid milk.
You might
drinks.
know. I want to know where the division was with Pepsi and Coke when it came to going after the bar and liquor market, because Coke dominated that one. And was it a decision that was actively made that Pepsi just said, you know what, we'll let them have that? Or were you guys both battling at one point? Do you know any of that history at all?
Yeah. So Pepsi forever has been number 2.
Really?
Kind of like Ava's trying harder. And they had a bit of a breakthrough with the Pepsi Challenge. Again, this is about 20 years ago. But in many cases, when they went after any bar, any restaurant customer, those people would say, but wait, you guys own Pizza Hut, KFC, Taco Bell. You're giving them most favored nation. We don't want to work with you.
Huh.
And it was very difficult to dislodge Coke from any of those accounts. So Pepsi tried. They just didn't have a lot of success with it.
Oh, were you around for the Harrier giveaway fiasco?
The Harrier giveaway?
Yeah, remember when Pepsi advertised that if you got so many Pepsi points, you'd get a AV8B Harrier, and some guy went and bought enough Pepsi to do that.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't.
This
remember that.
This was about 15 years ago, I think.
Wow. I don't remember that.
I was not around for that. I was around for Michael Jackson's hair catching on fire in a Pepsi commercial.
Oh,
that was
really?
a big embarrassment. Yeah.
How did that happen?
He got too close to the pyro.
Oh,
And at that point, he had a lot of hair.
Yeah.
That was an ugly deal.
So when you started in M&A, how many deals did you see on a regular basis?
Way too many.
Right.
Those businesses, the investment banks tend to run really lean. So you'd typically be working on 3 or 4 sell-side assignments where you're writing a memorandum and sending that out to buyers and cold calling other CEOs to see if there's interest. And you'd be working on 1 or 2 buy-side assignments, and then inevitably something else would pop up. And Goldman was great about getting the most work and production out of people because they'd say, Tom, you're really good at fill in the blank, insurance company deals, consumer product deals. We really need you on this Friday afternoon to crank out another memo over the weekend. So it was great. I learned a lot, but it wasn't a terrific lifestyle. I probably gained 20 pounds and was Baby Huey after 18 months doing that job.
That sounds familiar. Jared's turned into Baby Huey, actually Big Baby Huey in the last couple of years. So have I.
Not for much longer.
Well, not for much longer. I mean, hot dog eating contest might put a brick on that, but going back to PepsiCo and kind of defining, I guess, your future as you're looking, because if you're looking at multiple deals for Pepsi,
right,
and you had an opportunity to kind of see exactly where you wanted to define your next position, right? Is that what was happening? Yeah,
it was a great opportunity that way, and I worked kind of one step below the chief financial officer of PepsiCo. Worked a lot with the CEO, wow. So it was great to see the whole strategy. Ironically, I recommended that they spin off the restaurants because it's confusing to investors to have Frito-Lay, Pepsi-Cola, the different restaurant chains all under one umbrella. And restaurants are very capital intensive if you own them. Not so if you franchise them. But at that time, most of the restaurants were company owned. That ended up happening in 1997 after I went to Taco Bell. But the big insight for me was most people who were at PepsiCo and had the chance to go into an operating company wanted to go to Pepsi or Frito-Lay because it was a little more glamorous, a little more marketing spend. Whenever you talk to people about the restaurant companies, they'd say, oh, wow, great brands, but they are nightmares because of all the people. It's just all these people problems.
Right.
And, of course, I'm thinking, well, that's what I dealt with in the military. It's all people problems.
Right.
I think I'm pretty good at that. In fact, I think I'm pretty good at managing teenagers and giving them a higher purpose. So I want to go in the restaurant business.
How did that go? Did they come to you with offering you the COO job at Taco Bell, or did you say, hey, I'm ready to move? Or was that like a surprise and you were like, oh, yes?
Well, the expectation was you'd stay for about 2 years in a position like the M&A job. And the Pizza Hut guys and the Taco Bell guys both said, hey, come join our team. And ultimately, I like tacos better than pizza. So that made it pretty straightforward to me. Plus, Taco Bell's in California. Pizza Hut was Wichita, moving to Dallas.
Right.
So I was able to jump in at Taco Bell, but I had to earn my stripes. So they said, we're going to give you 300 restaurants headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're going to see how you do. And you can bet all the other people who are running Taco Bell divisions, there are 5 other VPs So they brought me in as a VP to run my division. Everybody else like, this guy knows nothing. He's probably going to fail.
Right.
He's some Harvard Business School guy coming from headquarters. So that was how I had to earn my stripes. And, of course, my wife thought we were going to move to Irvine, Chicago, San Francisco, or maybe stay in the New York area where PepsiCo is based. And when I called her up and said, they want us to go to Nashville, she's like, where the F is Nashville? I was like, it's the middle of Tennessee. But we moved there, and she loved it.
And how long were you guys there?
3 years.
Okay.
How'd it go?
Well, the interesting thing, and this really ties back to the military, is Taco Bell was in this mode where they had grown very quickly, but at that time, and it was a ways back now, they were really advertising 59, 79, 99-cent menu. So it was all very value priced, get a lot of food for not much money. And it really stopped working about the time I got to Nashville. So Taco Bell's response, and this is all written up in Harvard Business School case studies, was they started leaning out above store supervision. So the idea was, you know what, let's let the restaurant managers be fully empowered, and rather than having one district manager or market manager for every 5 or 10 stores, we're going to have one district manager for every 20 to 30. So that was the playbook I inherited when I got to Nashville. And I said, guys, I haven't really run a lot of restaurants. I've kind of worked in food service when my mother had a catering business back in Pennsylvania, but I don't really get this. Like, how do you lead a business where each above store supervisor's got 20 restaurants? If there's a problem, how is that leader, he or she, going to go fix the problem? And they're like, don't worry, it all works out. It's great. And I thought, that's bullshit. That's never going to work, because the restaurant service, the quality of the culture, all of that was pretty much a disaster. And my colleagues generally were leaning from, say, one supervisor to 20 restaurants going to 1 to 30, 1 to 40. And it's like, do the math. How often can you visit a restaurant if you've got 30 restaurants in your control? Even if you're in a place like Nashville or Huntsville, Alabama, maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
And the restaurants needed help. They had staffing problems, service problems, big-time culture problems. So I started bucking the trend. I was like, hey, I know I'm going to be over my budget for supervision. I'm going to invest in above-store leaders. I'm going to run leadership training programs. I brought in a guy named Jim Lair, a sports psychologist who's still a good friend today, and we talked about how to get into the ideal performance state as a leader, how to groove out success routines as an above-store manager or even a restaurant manager. And we just started investing in leadership, supervision, store culture, and I got my ass chewed for having too much overhead spend. But a surprising thing happened after about a year. My results started getting better. I started driving same-store sales while the rest of the system was down. And lo and behold, long story short, I moved out to California to take a training job. Basically, it was a really ugly job to be head of training. The 3 guys who had it before me had either been fired or left. And about a month after I got there, they fired the senior management team at Taco Bell. And when the dust settled, that's when I became chief operating officer. They're like, he's got a plan. What's your plan? Situation, mission, execution, admin, logistics, command and control. Bam.
So you used your operations order.
That was it. I learned that stuff in officer candidate school. SMEAC'd them.
Yeah. See, that's funny. Like, a lot of people, we've talked about this specifically with the operations order and just defining mission, right? And the first business, and granted, my history is very short and not as impressive, but I wrote my business plan from an operations order. So I just took what was on the SBA's website and then translated that to the best of my ability into the operations order, and then it spit out this hunk of shit that on the other end,
right.
Which, ultimately did. I mean, we grabbed a $500,000 investment specifically out of that, which was from one of the guys that started the Celtic Bank out of Utah. And Celtic Bank, I think, is number 7 in SBA lenders in the nation at this point.
Right. Proving you can fool some of the people some of the time.
Yeah. And but it was funny because I'd never written a business plan. Like, this was the first thing that I'd ever written. And I came in and briefed the guys, basically the investment group. And one of the guys had seen I don't know, several hundred, if not 1,000 pitches. And he's like, man, this is great. Where did you guys get this format? It's impressive. And I was like, God, this is an operations order,
Right.
man. Like I don't know anything else. So this is what I know. This is what I'm going for. And he's like, it just flows really well. I really like this. Can you show this to some other guys? And I'm like, I'll just give you a Ranger handbook, and, and you can just devour this stuff. It's
Sure.
pretty easy.
You may have missed your calling. You could have been a consultant.
Oh, I don't know. Consultant's kind of like a bad word, isn't it? Like a
Ranger handbook consultant, though, would be a whole next level.
yeah. Well, and that actually started one of the not even a Genesis story specifically related to Black-Hearted was the ability to translate military service into the business world. And, one of my theories, it's just a theory,
Yeah.
right, is, if you were a leader, E5 or above in the military, and you're transitioning out, you've got a lot of different skills that are management and leadership intensive. So if you've led a fire team specifically, let's say overseas, or a maintenance shop or something like that, and you're transitioning, let's say you want to be a welder or a carpenter or HVAC guy, doesn't really matter, but standing up your own business is easier at that point as a senior NCO or junior officer, because you have all of those skills. And your small business or working for yourself, one, you're going to work harder. Two, you're going to have a little bit more, in concept, freedom, because you are working for yourself. And I think it's a more direct line from AB, specifically when you're getting out, I guess, transitioning into your own business versus transitioning into the corporate world. It can be
Right.
easier for
Sure.
a lot of people. The obstacles are writing a business plan, coming up with your task organization, your budgeting, and things like that, or defining yourself or redefining yourself with a skill set that you can market. And that's a theory. It's just a theory specifically involving, me. And then our mission here at Black-Hearted is, how do you do this as a vet? How do you make the transition out of service? Defining what you're going to do, and then just trying to make that happen. So, going back to when you were in the Marine Corps, did you see yourself in this position when you were leaving the Marine Corps today?
Absolutely.
Really?
I knew I wanted to make a living, but I really saw myself as a business owner, entrepreneur, partly because my mother had been that kind of a person. So she was a liberated woman long before it was popular. And she got into business, and this really relates to the point you're making about people coming out of the military. She saw unmet needs in the marketplace, and she was a maniac. She was a grizzly bear. She was kind of the Jim Mattis, be polite, be professional, be prepared to kill anybody you meet. In her case, it was prepare to dominate or rip the face off of anybody you meet. So if she saw an unmet need in the marketplace, she'd just gang tackle it.
Really?
And so I saw her in action. I thought, well, I can probably take what I learned with her in the catering business. She started a jacket company. She would just start businesses where she saw things not being taken care of. And again, was probably more intuitive. She probably didn't have the Ranger handbook at her disposal, but she just got after it. My dad worked for other companies as a sales guy, so he was more the type B, supportive, team player sort of guy who got along with everybody. My mother was feared by everybody, where my dad was loved and liked by everybody.
Interesting. So the yin and yang principle of parenting, I suppose, within their personalities.
Totally.
So, how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I've got a younger brother, Jim, who's an EMT out on Martha's Vineyard, and a younger sister, Katie, who's a hospitality professor at Johnson Wales up in Rhode Island.
And are you the oldest?
I am.
You are, based on that statement.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
Well, one thing that I also think that I've noticed a big gap that transfers from the military. If you've been on any exercise ever, one of the biggest things that you have to do to be successful is network with all the other agencies everywhere.
Yeah.
Every exercise, whether it's getting together air power or air movement logistics, or interfacing with the main event or the main battalion or division or whatever exercise you're doing that's doing. And it's like, that's where I see it mostly in the entertainment business side of things, but also too more in traditional business, they just don't have the networking. They don't see the value in a relationship without an immediate return, as opposed to, no, this could work out later.
Right. Yeah, people tend to be more transactional. Like, what are we doing today? What's the deal?
Where it's like your story, you show like you had this plan, like here's where I want to get, but I know I can't just walk through the door and get there right now.
Right.
So I'm gonna have to go this way. And I definitely think the military helps with that, because it kind of gives you just a better understanding on how to interface with a ton of different agencies that do completely different things.
Well, and some of that just gets to intel gathering to figure out what's the unmet need in the marketplace. You know, what it frustrates me is when I see people getting out of the military and they come to me and say, well, people have told me I should go into real estate or I should sell insurance. And I just say, stop. Like, why are you here on this earth? What is your personal mission in life? What do you want your legacy to be? And what do you see as gaps in the marketplace? And when they give me a blank stare, it's like, you got homework to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Go spend time on those questions and then think about how you make a difference. Don't just look for a job.
So did you do the Dale Dye thing as a Marine? Did you walk down to the 7-Eleven and grab a case of beer and some crayons and decide that Harvard was the path that you were going to take, or was it different?
No, the funny thing about that was I had absolutely no clue, probably like Dale, what the heck I would do coming out of the Marine Corps, because I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie like all of us. I loved the action. I loved the camaraderie, and I knew for sure I wouldn't see that level of teamwork, camaraderie, fun, and action when I got out of the military. I was like, okay, so I'm kind of screwed. So I better go to grad school and figure this out. Having been to California, I said, I'm going to go to UCLA. So I applied to UCLA, Anderson School, and Harvard Business School. I got accepted at both, and I told my mother, hey, I'm going to UCLA. She's like, why? Well, it's less expensive, it's in California, and it's more entrepreneurial. And she, of course, said, you've got to be kidding me. Nobody's ever gone to Harvard. So she called every person who had ever been influential to me in my life, from little league coaches to junior high and high school teachers to military officers. I literally had 2 or 3 calls a day saying, what? You're going to disappoint your mother and not go to Harvard? So,
she knows how to get her way.
Oh, yeah. So it wasn't a pad of paper, but it was a lot of frickin' phone calls about, don't let your mother down. I was like, okay, Mom, I'm tossing you a bone. I'll go to Harvard. I think it worked out okay for me.
Yeah. Well, did it fit your mission? I guess, did you write your mission out before you left and said, okay, these are the things that I'm looking for specifically? You know, did you have a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan, or did you just know, this is my mission, this is where I want to be?
No, and I think that was a mistake. That's really why I ended up at Goldman Sachs. So I kind of followed the mainstream, if you will, of people in graduate school and said, okay, what's the most difficult, competitive job with the most competitive people that pays the most money?
Oh, wow.
So I kind of went with that flow, and I ended up at Goldman, and it was a great job at a great firm, and Goldman's still a fantastic firm today, but it didn't speak to who I was and what my mission was. And so it was after that 18 months or so at Goldman, when I was turned into Baby Huey, I looked around and said, what am I doing? Why am I here? I'm not here just to make a lot of money as a banker. Being a banker is great. You walk into a room, everybody's like, ooh, you understand the black magic of M&A and transactions. Wow, tell us what to do. I was like, I really appreciate being out in the trenches, doing the hard work with the troops. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, what kind of a leadership position do I want to find? How do I build the skill set to have my own business? And what is my legacy going to be in terms of hopefully enabling others to be leaders? Hence the move to PepsiCo and then on to Taco Bell.
And since then, so once you've redefined, I guess, your mission and specifically what you're after based on your internal priorities, from that 18 months till now, have you met, fulfilled, and then exceeded what you wanted?
I would say no. I've met, but I haven't exceeded or fulfilled. I mean, to me, it's really about making a difference. Mm-hmm. And I'm always challenging myself, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough to give back to the team, give back to the communities we serve, particularly at 511? But there's no doubt in my mind 511 is the best platform for me. I had a lot of fun selling tacos and orange chicken. I never sold hot dogs, JT, sorry. I missed that boat. But there's more legacy in serving police, military, fire, and the folks who buy our 511 products. So it's the perfect platform for me, and there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, you don't give many stories about how a taco saved their life.
Exactly. I was starving, and then I got a taco at the drive-thru.
At 59 cents. 59 cents, I scratched it out of my couch, and you saved my life. Well, and I can imagine, I guess looking back, and I didn't know this. So prior to this, I didn't really know your full history. Out of all the people that you've worked with now in the corporate world, and then the people that you've known in the military, you've kept relationships with a lot of these people, and you've had a really good look at a lot of different managers and leaders. Yeah. So my question is, who are the best leaders that you've come by or come into contact with? And have you noticed individual traits that are characteristic with all?
Right. Well, I was at a funeral, as you guys know, last Friday for General Bob Habel, who I met as a Marine 20 plus years ago, and he was in his 50s at the time, but he had served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, multiple tours, and he was a commanding general of 3rd Marine Division. And that guy never forgot a name, loved everybody he was ever around, even the most lowly private who was cleaning the head. So first and foremost, he showed everybody how much he cared, but at the same time, he was manically focused on the mission. And as a result, that combination of loving his people and mission focus, people really wanted to give him their best. And he had a way of giving everyone positive energy and a sense that they were doing something special. And when you talked to the general, you felt like you were the only guy in the room. So I've really tried to model myself as a more senior leader on what I saw from General Habel. So I was a captain, he was a general. I now think, all right, I'm CEO of 511. When I'm dealing with one of my mid-level people, effectively a captain or a staff NCO, how would General Habel handle this?
And so with those traits kind of going back and modeling your leadership style, that was when you were at 03, right? In Oki? Was that in Oki?
Yeah, Okinawa.
And when you were that age, did you know that he was going to be that prominent of a fixture into your life, I suppose?
I had no idea.
Right.
I knew he was a special guy.
Right.
And my good friend John Holden married his daughter, so
right.
Wasn't my time.
Wasn't your time.
Yeah, John married Lisa Habel, and they're still very happily married. So he was probably the first. Another big influence in my life was a guy named George Grabner. So when I was growing up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, George was a hotshot guy working for Richardson Vicks. He had had 2 tours in Vietnam, infantry officer, airline observer, went to Harvard Business School. The guy looked then and looks today like Teddy Roosevelt. Speaks with very short, clipped speech, hilariously funny. He was my backdoor neighbor when I was 15, 16. And as you heard, my dad was a great guy, naval officer, surface line, but pretty low-key. George was super hard-charging, great representative for the Marine Corps. And I thought, there's a guy I want to be like sometime later in life. And the takeaway I got from George was, hey, when you get in the Marine Corps or the military in general, you're going to be given a lot of bullshit jobs to do. And you're a smart guy, but take every job they give you and attack it like a crazy maniac, and you will be surprised. He said, I know this doesn't make any sense to you at all right now, but when you go through training, officer candidate school, ranger school, whatever, be that crazy maniac and attack the most lowly jobs with massive positive energy. So that was probably the first leadership lesson I got from older Marines, and I've always tried to make that part of my mantra, that whatever it is, we're going to crush it, we're going to dominate, we're going to do it the best that anybody's ever done it, even if I don't really understand why the heck we're doing it.
Right. Wait, and so from like your military influencers, I suppose, then when we move into the corporate world, have you found there's the same type of leaders over there, or are they just different?
No, I think you see a lot of those leaders in business. The big challenge in business that I think makes it so much harder is the measurement in business at the end of the day is return on investment, shareholder value creation, things that can be measured with accounting metrics. So the financial numbers tend to be what people judge leaders by in business. The issue and the dissonance is if you come in and say, I'm just solving for financial outcomes, that's the most important thing and that's what I stand for, you will cause people to be disaffective and disengaged right away. Because they'll say, whoa, what's in it for me? You're the boss, you're the big shareholder, you're making more than I am. If all we're doing is trying to hit some numbers, what's in it for me? Why should I care? So I think the challenge in business is you got to lead with the mission. You got to do your homework, your intel package, your situational analysis. You've got to make the mission bigger than the financial outcome. So if you start with the mission, you really drive culture, then I think you've got a good chance of hitting the numbers. I believe the hard stuff is driven by the soft stuff. The hard stuff are the metrics.
Mm-hmm.
The soft stuff really drives the financial outcomes. And there's a lag. So if you come in, you can turn a company quickly by cutting costs and ripping people out, but you're not going to build a culture that way. And so I would say a great example of somebody in business who's got that General Habel leadership style would be Rick Brooks. Rick is the CEO at Zumiez, the mall-based retailer. I had a chance to be part of it in the early 2000s. And Rick was a CFO. He transcended the numbers. He's all about culture. So at Zumiez, everything they do starts with, here's our mission. Now their mission is sell as much stuff to as many people as possible. So not necessarily a big higher calling there, but they're all about enabling these teenagers to become business leaders, and the good ones become managers and regional managers. So all promote from within. Incredibly diverse kind of pirate ship culture there, but culture is everything at Zumiez. And so I had a chance to invest in Zumiez, and we had a great outcome there, and I've really modeled what I do in business after what Rick and the founder Tom Campion do at Zumiez, and they're still both very involved with the company.
Wow. Other CEOs from other companies that you have, direct lines or communication with that you can respect the way that they're running their companies?
I'm very impressed with Kalo, if you're familiar with the ring company. I'm wearing a Kalo ring.
Oh, okay,
so,
yeah.
Ted Baker,
Yeah.
it's QALO. So what I like about those guys is they took a category that really was
You carry those in 511 stores.
We do.
Yes,
That's,
yes.
Yeah, I found them at a surf shop, and I thought, who is going to buy these silicone rings that cost $20 to $30? It's like, this is a dumbass idea.
Right.
And then, of course, I bought one and went, this is brilliant. I don't have to take my wedding ring off when I'm swinging a kettlebell. I put the wedding ring in the drawer and wear the Kalo. Now I wear the Kalos all the time, and I've probably got 10 of them.
Right.
I did buy them at 511.
Right.
But those guys saw a great opportunity. They're brilliant in the way they go to market with their social media activation, and they built a terrific culture. They're right down in Irvine near where we are.
Oh, okay. So you got in contact with those guys basically?
We met them through CrossFit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's all part of the whole CrossFit group. And you know,
Right.
going back to a truly gifted founder, Greg Glassman at CrossFit.
Right.
I mean, he is a maniac. But you look at the movement he's created, his brilliance around democratizing fitness in a very libertarian way, opening it up to anybody who wants to get a level 1 cert and pay their fee can open a CrossFit box. And, the good ones do really well. If you don't have your act together, you're not going to do so well. But he doesn't franchise.
Right.
It's very different than a typical franchise model.
And so that we've got two. I'm not probing for anybody here. I know that you come into contact with so many people from the business world, even if it's not the CEO.
Right. Well, I tend to think about, who are the people I can trust and really learn from.
Right.
And some of the folks I've been around who've been brilliant business leaders. Andrew Chung at Panda.
Mm-hmm.
So Andrew is a very wealthy guy. He was a billionaire when I met him when I went to run Panda in 2004.
Right.
But he was very focused on mission and culture. Now, given his Chinese heritage, he might do things differently than I would do them. But his attitude was, we're going to do the right thing and let the chips fall where they may. So he and I both agreed that fitness should be part of the culture at a company, even a restaurant company. And we knew in today's America, you're going to get sued if you try and make people work out.
Right.
So we thought, okay, everybody can walk. So if everybody can walk, we can take everybody hiking. Again, if you've got some sort of disability, fine, you can stay in the office. But we started taking people hiking, and we got to where hundreds of people would be hiking up the San Gabriel Mountains in the LA Basin. And then we'd say, well, we're going to do a Grand Canyon trip. And we'd take a select group of maybe 20 or 30 through the Grand Canyon. But a lot of people had that opportunity to start. And ultimately that evolved, believe it or not, into formation runs for restaurant manager training. Mandatory formation
That's
runs.
awesome.
Which again, if you just today said, okay, here at Black Rifle Coffee, we're going to do a formation run. It's like, why?
Half the guys are like E9s. They tell me to get fucked.
Right.
I'd be like, I've run enough in my life.
But what happened, the reason it worked is we started telling people, look, we're working on the whole person, much
Right.
like in the military. We want you to have a great quality of life. That's what Panda's all about. Panda, yes, it's about orange chicken and building restaurants. We want you to have a great life. You have to be fit at least to some degree. So we think hiking and even jogging in formation can work. And when Andrew Chung, who was over 60, leads a formation run of 3 miles
great.
in restaurant training, people say, okay. I mean, are they going to sue the company? And we'd warn people, look, don't come to the restaurant manager training program unless you can run 3 miles in a certain time, which is basically equivalent of a fast walk.
Right.
And that worked out well. And people thought, you guys are, you're going to get sued. You're going to lose millions of dollars. And Andrew's view was, hey, I'm doing the right thing. If people want to sue us, great. I got lawyers.
Right.
So I love that attitude.
That's awesome. Most influential, or some of the most influential books that you've read in the last 20 years?
I think Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1,
Mhm.
which is relatively new. That one's outstanding. Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you're familiar with Viktor Frankl. He is a psychologist who was a Jew during World War II who went to the concentration camp. And he ended up creating this whole theory of logotherapy. So he doesn't believe, or he didn't believe, that everything was caused by your sexual desires, etc., unlike some other psychologists and philosophers out there. So he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he's got a great quote that says, what man needs is not a struggle-less or easy life, but a search for a greater cause. So he's all about, if you have a mission, if you have meaning, then you can have a good life. And that requires some amount of struggle.
Well, that's awesome. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to break for episode 2.
What? Already?
I know.
It's only been 15 minutes.
No, it's actually, we're at our half-hour mark.
We're at 43.
Yeah.
So
we're going to get into 511. Kind of really, I want to spend a lot of time on the rebranding, I guess, of 511. Kind of where you're headed with 511, and let's get into it the next episode.
Good.
So tune in in a couple of days.
We'll get to part 2 with 511 and Tom Davin.
Black Rifle Coffee Company, along with Arson Wave, would like to thank you for tuning in to Black-Hearted. Have a great fucking